The politics of lockdowns. What is really happening in Trinidad and Tobago? We have a situation where the government through the Ministry of Health is claiming that the COVID cases are spiking, and they are giving us half bits of information without telling us where these COVID cases are coming from. And that's a concern. That's something that we really need to question now, because the same government is responsible for securing this nation's borders. The same government is responsible for the exemptions. The same government is responsible for the quarantines. We live on an island. We've locked down 13 months now. COVID's supposed to be dead in Trinidad. We're not supposed to be having COVID, much less Brazilian variants. So was Stuart Young a failure as the Minister of National Security? And if he was, why did we promote him to Minister of Energy? I mean, there are so many questions to be asked, so many questions that are not being asked by the media in the public space, and we will be asking them today. We'll be joined by my brother Paul Elias Alexander, one of the most renowned epidemiologists on this COVID coronavirus issue. He will be giving us some information today. So we're going to take a break right now for our intro and for the first batch of ads. When we come back, we'll be talking to Dr. Paul Elias Alexander, and we will also be taking your calls for Dr. Alexander when we come back.
Darren's Air Conditioning Services. Professional services at affordable prices. They have air-conditioned units starting at $2,100 with installation. We supply Lennox, Pioneer, Infinity, and Comfy units, all at unbeatable prices. Servicing of a 12,000 BTU at only $150. Don't forget to check them out on Facebook and Instagram. So contact Darren's Air Conditioning Services at 749-8245.
Unique Woodworking Trinidad Limited and Unique Lumber Guyana Incorporated are premium manufacturers and exporters for high-quality wood and steel doors, bifolding sliding and pocket door systems, operable louver shutters, hardwood floors, staircases, and decks. We specialize in bank counters, office furniture, cabinetry with granite countertops, and over 500 architectural molding designs. We provide complete outfitting for hotels, resorts, hospitals, banks, tertiary institutions, condominiums, and residential projects. We also supply kiln-dried greenheart, mahogany, cedar, and teak lumber locally and regionally. Our logs are cut and shipped by Unique Lumber Guyana and properly dried in our computerized kiln at our factories facilities in Trinidad. For over 32 years, our products have been standing strong, and we are committed to providing after-sales support. Visit our showroom or check out our website at www.uniquedoors-tt.com. It's the quality that makes us unique.
And we're back, and we have with us, and we're going to be getting some answers to a lot of the questions that you have, that we have. We are not understanding some of the things going on in the country, but as of today, new public health measures take effect from midnight tonight, ending on Sunday, May 16th, which is a week after our May 7th presentation to the Parliament. So we may have to have an emergency candlelight movement meeting to postpone our date. We are going to serve. You see how the Black Lives Matter movement in America, you see how they were committed to their course of action and did not let it go. We are going to be doing the same thing for Andrea. We are going to be making sure that we keep this front and center. But as of today, no public gatherings for entertainment and concerts. What does that mean for cinemas? What does that mean for movie town? I'm waiting to hear on that. Public service to revert to 50% attendance on a rotational basis, which sounds like business as usual for the public service to me. Congregations at places of worship will be reduced from 50% capacity to 25% capacity. So you have to have your prayers on the fly. Drive-through masses coming soon to Catholic churches. And weddings and funerals will be limited to 10 persons. Now I want to tell you the stupidity of that one. Because you could have 50% of the 50% in the churches now. Why is that 10 people for a funeral or a wedding when the same amount of people in the church could be there for the wedding and the funeral? We just had a big shot Syrian wedding that had over 200 people in St. Clair. Last week we had Faris wrestling for dollars by Voice House. He said it was, once it's a private residence, any amount of people could come. So does COVID not cross the line when COVID realizes it's a private residence? All of that, we need answers. And the best person to turn to is a qualified epidemiologist, one of the most respected right now in the world on this matter, my brother, Dr. Paul Alexander. Hello, Paul.
Yes, Philip. Paul is here, and thanks for introducing me again. I like how he's introduced me, but I'm just a regular person, Philip.
You mean that sounds so nice. All the ladies in the audience will start to think that they want to put their name in a hat to see if you're single. Tell them one time that you're spoken for.
Okay. Philip,
we are going to be taking calls. People have been begging me to let them talk to you. So those of you who are listening now, Satish, I didn't know how to get this phone up and running. So, right. We will be taking calls on 486-2888. So when you hear, don't call now because we're not going to take the calls. But when you hear that we're taking calls, you can jump in. The number to dial will be 486-2888. Paul, bring us up to speed now. COVID in the world. Bring us up to speed.
In what sense? Now, I listen to you and I read in the situation in Trinidad. Similar situation happening in Canada and Ontario, the province of Ontario. The bottom line, Philip, is this. A lot of the actions, look, let me qualify it and say this. You don't like to second guess your public health officials and your Minister of Health and such. But the reality about it is we're now 14 to 15 months into this thing. And a lot of the action by these public health officials who advise these ministers and the ministers, the PMs and the ministers of health, etc., they're patently absurd, illogical, and irrational. They make no sense. Absolutely no sense. Whether in Trinidad, whether it's in Ontario, Canada, whether it's in California, United States, they're almost, I don't know what word to use. And I mean, I talk about Trini as a Trinidadian, but I mean, I talk about I'm somewhat informed, so I could speak as an expert on this issue. And the issue is that COVID in January, February of 2020 is not COVID in April, May of 2021. And we are 14 to 15 months in, and we know now specifically who's the at-risk group. We know how to treat them. We know how to manage it. So they have no reason, none whatsoever, for for these kind of draconian measures and these lockdowns and closures and etc. because they are absolutely catastrophic and they have crushing harms in terms of business closures and societal devastation. And I mean, when I talk crushing harms, I'm talking about from the point of view that, as an example, when in the height of this in June, July of 2020, just recently in America, and I know in Canada and Britain, etc., we were seeing the data where adults in the society were committing suicide and children in elementary schools were committing suicide because they could not deal with lockdowns and the closures. It's not COVID, the virus. It's the effect of the lockdown, the isolation, and the impact of it. So it just doesn't make sense, and it seems that these experts that sitting down there with your Minister of Health and your Chief Medical Officer of Health, they're all like deers, with that deer in the headlight statement where like they just dumbfounded and they don't know what to do. And they're making no sense whatsoever, and they have the information. There's a lot of science out there, there's a lot of data out there that we know of, and they seem either blinded to the science, they either can't read the data, they just can't understand the data, or they're just inept and so with a kind of a academic sloppiness that they're not willing to work to understand what the graph's showing them, what data telling them, and they're just making crazy decisions. And I'll give you an example. In Ontario, the Premier of Ontario 2 days ago came out with a new ruling to lock the province down, and he gave police powers to arrest people if you step out of your yard or your house, and etc. Well, the public pushed back immediately, and they quickly ran to the podium and said, okay, we're gonna reverse those two issues because the public upset. Well, the fact of the matter is, because you could implement a public health policy that you say is to help us, because people are going to die, you have the authority to do that. But because you reverse it, when the public say no, it means that you really had no credible basis to do it. All you're doing is you're abusing your power, and you're abusing and punishing the citizenry. You're drunk with power now, so you're so happy you don't know what to do. So they try to charge people for walking out of the yard even. And when the people say no, they say, okay, we wouldn't do that. But if it was really credible that you needed to implement that step, you didn't have to reverse it. It just means that these bastards try to do things to see how much you're willing to take, and if you push back, they will stop.
Hearing you say that and saying what I said at the top of this, in Trinidad and Tobago, there is no law that allows the police right now under this pandemic law, on this public health emergency law. There is no law that allows the police to come into your house. You could have 2,000 people in your yard for a private gathering. The police can't do anything. As long as it's private, it's not a public. As long as it's not, they have no cover charge, and you're in a residential place, they can't stop you. The law, there is no grounds under law. They can't stop you. There is no law. There is no reason for them to be able to come in your property. The Attorney General was found without any mask in a arm wrestling lime at a Calypsonian's house, and he tried to justify that by saying he's only human and his COVID fatigue and one sort of nonsense. But at the end of the day, we live in a country where just the week before there was a massive Syrian wedding in Sinclair, and it was in a residential property, and that is the argument, that is residential. Somebody just released another wedding today. It looked like some East Indian people, a big wedding with some white thrones. So it looks like we are just flying blind where this COVID thing is concerned. You could do what you want if you're connected. COVID seems to be being told what to do. COVID will go into a mall, COVID will go into a church, but COVID wouldn't go into a wedding. And I don't understand why the public of the world still putting up with this foolishness?
Well, look, the first 2 to 3 weeks in February of 2020, we didn't actually have a full picture because we were just getting these crazy pictures coming out of Italy with dead people on the sidewalk, and then China talking about extreme measures on locking down. So we didn't have our arms around this issue. So if you told me the first 2 to 3 weeks that we needed to put a pause on things to get an idea of exactly the parameters of this issue and what the pathogen was, etc. But after 2 weeks, so let's say the end of February 2020 to the first week of March 2020, that's over a year now, we had the data, we knew what the pathogen was, we knew who was at risk, and we knew exactly what to do. Everything from the first week of March to the middle of March 2020, the government in Trinidad, government in Canada, government in different states in America, Britain, etc., everything they've done, they did not have to do. They abused their power. They knew exactly the wrong that they were doing. But when you get power in your hands and you get Johnny to cower below his bed, Johnny will keep cowering below his bed because Johnny is a stupid idiot. Johnny don't want to watch the news, or not watch the news. He don't want to think for himself because he getting garbage from the news. But Johnny don't want to think at a deeper level.
And I watched Bill Maher last night in a closing comment. Bill Maher, the comedian, he said that. He said, I don't want my politics and my journalism mixed in with my medical advice. He said, and yesterday he is an out and out Democratic supporter, and he gave blows to the New York City Democratic Governor Cuomo, who did not take the steps that he said the Republican governor of Florida did, and protected those at risk and protected the elderly. You're saying that. You're saying this. We need to hammer this home. We have an overcorrection taking place in the world. Our media, social media, Facebook has become Gestapo alley. You post the wrong thing, Facebook shut down your whole page because Facebook saying that contradicts community standards. But what are community standards? When did community standards be about what we say is right and not about let us look for what is right?
Okay, you're right. But here's the thing. Let's just focus on this issue here because it's what they're doing again with COVID. So I read in the news and I see cases going up in Trinidad. They're talking about some more deaths. They're talking about the variants. So let me use Australia or New Zealand as an example for you. And whatever I say about Australia and New Zealand and Canada, you know that I'm talking about Trinidad. So Australia went ahead and imposed the most draconian lockdown for many months over the last year. Just like Trinidad, the lockdowns that you all went through, and then the easing up, and then the re-lockdowns, and now lockdowns again. Exactly what Australia did. So when you spoke to the Prime Minister of Australia and the Minister of Health, so assume you're talking to Parashram and all those in Trinidad, whatever their name is, they all sing. When you spoke to them, they say, well, we're locking down tight, so this virus can't come in. So we have police on the street coming in your yard and your house. If you come outside, we're going to jail you, blah, 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 blah. So all Australians went inside and locked down for almost a year. And we looking on and we saying, but this is the craziest thing. How these people living like this? So here's the key. When you ask the Prime Minister and you ask the people in charge what you're trying to accomplish here, well, they say, well, we want zero COVID. We want to destroy every case, and we're waiting for the vaccine. So when people like me and other experts write them and talk to them and say, listen, moron, because you have to be a moron, the virus is not going to go away. When you lock, and remember I'm telling you this about Trinidad, so please extrapolate. I don't want to explain Trinidad, I explain in Australia and it means Trinidad. When you lock the society down so tight, the virus is going to lay in wait for when you emerge. Whilst you have the virus laying in wait, you are not allowing your society to go on towards natural exposure immunity. So people could have been mingling, getting infected, low-risk people, and developing a closer, approach towards herd immunity, natural level population immunity. Also, you allow the virus to mingle in the environment, so it getting a chance to mutate on its own. Viruses mutate spontaneously. So here's the thing. When they finish their lockdown, so assume Trinidad would finish theirs, and now going back into one. Why? When Australia was finished their lockdown and they come out and they beat in the chest, well, we did all this hard lockdown, so we defeated this virus. And now here's vaccines. We're going to vaccinate everybody. Everybody's going to get vaccines. So we're looking on at Australia and we're trying to tell them, idiots, right now you're in a more dangerous position. You thought that your population, you locked down and no virus spread, but you didn't let nobody get natural immunity. And now you're going towards a vaccine. But we have a problem with the vaccine. The vaccine is a very narrow, spike-specific immune vaccine that if you administer that vaccine to your population, you might turn around and vaccinate everyone. But they have no natural immunity. None. And you're just giving them immunity to a very narrow vaccine. What happens when the variants that now have come about come knocking on your border? All of those people that you vaccinated will only be immune to that vaccine, that very narrow, spike-specific vaccine immunity. They will have low levels of natural immunity, which is more robust, durable, and broad-based. So in other words, you will be like back to ground zero, in fact in a worse position, because your population now going to be vulnerable to all of the variants. It's as though you have no immunity. So you have actually damaged the population. And I am telling you that's what's happened to Trinidad. You are going to see more and more cases because these vaccines, because of the lockdowns you've done, and the vaccines that you want to run about and administer the population today, is a very narrow immunity vaccine. People are not going to be able to deal with the variant because you're not going to lock Trinidad down forever. So those variants of the mutated strains are going to be there, and they're going to come into the island, and then you're going to have cases again. And what you're going to do, lockdown? So it's a nonsensical approach. People will not. These experts, I don't know.
They're looking foolish. The point you're making, they're looking foolish because right now they're telling us about a spike. They're telling us 171 new cases today and 3 deaths. They're not giving us any information as to where those people got COVID from. They're not telling us the ages, the comorbidities. Last night again, Bilma had to say 78%. 78% of the people who ended up in hospital with COVID, 78% of them were obese. And he said,
correct.
He said to the governors of the states, and he was saying this, he was saying instead of having people cower and hide from COVID, we should have had people exercising. We should have had people running and going to the gym and training and losing weight, eating better. He said we should have put, Nobody was saying we should have put the whole panic of COVID. He said vitamin D and the breeze. It's so important to managing this virus. We should have had everybody on the beach. I mean, Trinidad made a joke and a mockery because our opposition leader talks from the top of her head. She trolls Facebook, collects quips and shares it as policy. So then we ended up now with an opposition joke where it should have been, we should have been using the fact that we are a tropical country and that we could have been having our people use the salt water and the sea and the beach on a regular basis and would have helped. We are in such a mess now in this country. They don't even know what they're doing.
You're in a mess because of several factors. One, when June and July last year came around, because you're in the hottest part of the world and the island is a hot island, we should have been using the temperature and the environment there to help deal with it. People should have been outdoors. You don't isolate, you don't lock people down indoors when proper ventilation, would have reduced your risk significantly. Black people, brown people need vitamin D supplementation because the sunlight can't penetrate the skin optimally. We should have had public service announcements over a year. I want you to listen to how I'm saying it. Okay? Many people who died in Trinidad died unnecessarily because the government did not. Your Minister of Health, your public health, moronic, idiot doctors there did not message about vitamin D. They did not message properly in public service announcements. The listen population, you people need to lose 10, 15, 20 pounds, and that would have significantly dropped your risk. So everybody that's going to die now and next, because there will be, is because they're overweight and they're obese. Bill Maher said 78 is actually closer to 85%. In United States and Canada and Britain, etc., 80 to 85% of the people who died from COVID were elderly people who had grave medical conditions, and COVID gives way to age and medical conditions if you're obese. We found that the vast majority of black population in America, which tended to be the poor population, died because they were fat. We don't have a pandemic, we have a fatdemic. This is a fatdemic, and I'm talking to you bluntly. You see, this is a piece of political correctness bullshit that those people running around with in these high-paying government medical expert jobs. They're not telling the people the truth. They didn't tell the people the truth. Listen, you had to drop your weight. COVID is exploiting excess body weight. But they're afraid to say it because it's too politically incorrect and people are going to get offended. But you needed to tell people the truth. The vast majority of people who died, black people, were fat and overweight. They're obese.
But this
they're
is
morbidly obese.
But this is what is getting me upset. The media is working with the whatever the state agenda is and telling people surge in spread of COVID-19. 171 cases, right? Now we know the statistics say of that 171 cases, 165 will be mild. If you just use the average statistics that we've experienced for all of the last 13 months that we've been fighting COVID, 165 will be mild. Of those that are not mild, because our Prime Minister, Keith Rowley, he has COVID-19 now. He is 71. He has a busted heart. His heart is operating by the grace of God and the surgeons in West Shore Hospital. He is an old and ragged man. And he is in quarantine with COVID-19, business as usual. Convening cabinet, having meetings, doing what he needs to do. So why are they still being allowed to lie to the public as if COVID, and again, I want to quote Bill Maher. He said when they checked, there were actual people in government who believed that 50% of people who get COVID will end up in hospital when it's 3%. He said that is a ridiculous number when those in actual authority are spreading such ridiculous misinformation. But we have to take a short break now to pay some bills, and we have to open the phone lines because people are going to want to be asking you questions, and we're going to be taking calls when we come back with Dr. Paul Alexander on 486-288. Paul, stand by. We're taking a short break.
Darren's Air Conditioning Services. Professional services at affordable prices. They have air-conditioned units starting at $2,100 with installation. We supply Lennox, Pioneer, Infinity, and Comfy units, all at unbeatable prices. Servicing of a 12,000 BTU at only $150. Don't forget to check them out on Facebook and Instagram. So contact Darren's Air Conditioning Services at 749-8245.
Welcome to Movers in Trinidad Limited, Trinidad's #1 company for professional relocation and transport services. We operate 24/7, anywhere nationwide. Don't lift a finger, or Movers will ensure your move is smooth and hassle-free. Customer satisfaction is our #1 priority. Items are properly packaged and well secured during transit. Call or WhatsApp 790-MOVE to book. That's 790-6683. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Movers in Trinidad.
We're back. This is Plain Talk. We have Dr. Paul Alexander on the phone. We'll be taking your calls on 486-2888 from now. When you call, keep your call short. Say where you're calling from, and you have to make room for the others who are going to try to get into. All of you who are looking at this, wherever you're looking at this, please like, follow, and share our pages. Hit the like button, hit the follow button. More importantly, go to my main page, Philip Edward Alexander, at Peter and Bago on Facebook, and click like, click follow, click share. We want to say a special shout out to TT Talk on Facebook. We are streaming live on their pages now. And we would like to say a quick shout out to Darren's Air Conditioning, Unique Woodworking, Build a Basket, SCA CXC tuition classes, Flood Secure Barriers, Fishy Pets, Trini Pet Store in Movietown, the Care Clinic and Medical Center in Kitchener Street, Woodbrook, Musai's Auto Service in El Dorado, Stationery United in Barataria, Trinity Light in Western Main Road, St. James. We have Dr. Paul Alexander. And Paul, you could continue talking now, and as we get calls, I'll just bring them in.
Okay, Philip, so you could hear me?
Yes.
I wanna say something here so you could understand something. This is key. COVID is a very serious illness for very old people who are sick. That is people who would have died absent of COVID. Let's not make a joke or relegate that. But the vast majority of people who bump up against COVID will do very well and survive and have no problems with it. In fact, the data tells us that roughly the infection mortality rate for persons 70 years old and below is 0.05%. 0.05%. That means that your chance of survival is almost 100% if you bump up into with COVID. And the reality about it is this. We're not saying that this is not a serious issue. This is a serious issue for very sick people and very elderly people. But again, if you're a young person, if you're a child, you're an infant, you're a teenager, a young adult, a middle-aged person, even an older person that is reasonably healthy, you're a healthy person, you have no problem with COVID. In fact, the infection fatality rate is similar to influenza or even lower. So a lot of the responding and a lot of the philosophy is actually nonsensical, and it was devised to scare the people. It makes no sense what they have done here.
And I want to add just some statistics so people understand what he is saying. Since we've had coronavirus, COVID-19 on planet Earth, 144,252,781 people tested positive. Of that, 122,423,466 fully recovered. There have been 3 million deaths. In the whole world that has a population of 7,000 million people and climbing, there have been 3 million deaths. And I'll put that in context of the other things that kill you. Of the active cases now, of the currently infected cases in the whole world, there are 18,763,288 cases currently, people who are positive for COVID. Of that number, 18,653,778 or 99.4% are in mild condition. Of the remaining 109,510 people are in serious or critical condition. Now, I want you to understand this, and the point that he is making is that COVID is a very serious illness. Like all illnesses are very serious illnesses, but if you are in your 80s and you have comorbidities and you get measles, it could kill you. The seasonal flu takes out the elderly every year. That's one of the biggest causes of death among the elderly, not so?
Yes. And the reality about it, Philip, is this is the thing, and I mean, adding a little more to what you're saying. We know this pathogen very well, and we know what is happening. The virus itself doesn't kill those elderly people you spoke about with grave medical conditions, or those obese people. Okay, it is not the virus itself. It is a very hyper-inflammatory response that takes place, that your immune system undergoes. And the reality about it is we actually have medications, corticosteroid medications like budesonide, dexamethasone, methylprednisolone, etc., that we can give you to calm the immune response, to calm it down and get you through that hyperpulmonary phase, that inflammatory phase, and you'll survive. So we actually have very sick people who are very elderly, who have grave underlying conditions and who enter that terrible pulmonary phase with their breathing difficulties, etc. And we can get them to survive and they live. So the reality is COVID is not a death sentence even for the gravely sick people. So this is the thing. The thing is, the media not explaining all of this stuff to you because they're trying to continue to scare you with all this variance crap and mutations crap. We have no evidence, none. We have no evidence in the West, in North America, that we have serious problems with these variants in terms of infectivity and lethality. We have none. Nobody could show me a study, and I on top of all the research. You have no evidence that the variants more lethal. So if they're telling you that in Trinidad is bullshit. Now I'm talking as a Trini and not as a scientist because I'm very angry. Because I see what they're doing to the society. I understand what they're doing. They're doing the same
They're
thing in
using
Ontario,
COVID in
Canada.
Trinidad and Tobago to loot the country. That's what they're doing. They're using it to exact dictatorial powers over the population. That's what
I
they
agree.
do.
And they've done that throughout the world, and the cat is out of the bag now, and the ground is shifting on them. And even this issue of the vaccines and stuff, this is a catastrophe what they have done here. Because let me tell it to you, I your brother talking. I might be a little more informed on some of the issues, but I'm not more informed than you or even the lay people. I learning as much as everybody too. We could have dealt with COVID without a vaccine, and the medical community and the government people know this. We understood that if you'd have allowed the lowest persons in your population to live a reasonably normal life and properly secure the high-risk people in the first place, just secure the high-risk people, we could have allowed the rest of society to live a normal life. Listen, the World Health Organization in 2019, just before Christmas, issued a guideline document called a Pandemic Planning Response. Before this happened, and in that pandemic planning document, it listed out all the 15 to 20 mitigation things you see people have done in your country and in other countries, like lockdowns, school closures, shelter in place, masks, everything. The World Health Organization in 2019 said all of that is bullshit. All is crap. Use none. The only thing to do, the World Health Organization wrote, and this is it, they shelved their own guidance and they pretended it didn't exist. But we knew it existed because we partake in producing it. Two things only, always. The only two things needed in a pandemic. One, increase hand washing, and two, isolate the symptomatic sick people. I want you to hear that statement. Symptomatic sick people, not asymptomatic people. People who are sick and you have clear clinical suspicion that they have COVID or that they have a positive test, you isolate them. Nobody else. You don't contact trace people going like nuts. This test tracing is crap. Why? You only do testing and contact tracing before the disaster takes hold. But once the pathogen is spread within a society, you cannot contact trace people. You're wasting resources. You'll be walking around in circles. So everything that they have done, everything they have written about the WHO, do not do. Just hand washing and isolation of the sick people, period. No lockdowns, it is catastrophic, they said. No masking, it is ineffective, it doesn't work. Those blue masks, cloth masks is bull. Don't work. None. No school closures. You're destroying children. None. But they have done all of these things. And they can't defend it. They just can't. So what they're doing now is they're hardening the lockdowns. And they're making it harder for you because they know you're figuring it out. So they're trying to make you believe, well, this must be bad because they're doing more of it. No, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. Because just look around you. You just need to look around you and see, who in my friends? Who in my family? And if there is somebody, one or two people that you knew passed from COVID, I could guarantee you they were very sick people. They were no healthy person falls from COVID. If you dig deep, you'll find out the truth.
12 million people are going to die this year from smoking. 500,000 people are going to die this year from malaria. I mean, I'm just looking at the health statistics and the information system on the World Health Organization own website. I'm looking at World Odometer that counting things by the second. We have 500,000 mothers are going to die giving birth. I mean, it is a ridiculous overcorrection, overreaction, as you've said, and I want to say again, I want to say what you've said again so people understand that the global medical community is on top of COVID-19 now, and it is why Keith Rowley, with his ragged 71-year-old body and his busted heart, is still normal. And when our media giving us information about how many people in hospital today, they're not giving you the actual facts as to what their conditions might be while they're in hospital. Are they on ventilators? Are they on life support? What are their comorbidities? What are their ages? Because this is information that's critical to the decision-making process. We are destroying an economy and we are going to be killing a lot more people than COVID ever could because of this ridiculous overcorrection.
Correct.
Suicide
and you have a
is
problem
up.
with the vaccine.
Yeah, suicide is up in the world.
Yes, Philip. We saw in June of last year, 2020, we were seeing data that showed us that 25 to 30% of all the university students in the United States, college and university, so you talk about millions of the youngest, strongest people in America, they reported that they seriously considered suicide. Why? They reported because of the lockdowns. They couldn't deal with the infringement on their liberties, and the bullshit coming from the governments, and the haphazard approach, and the isolation and the loneliness. We were seeing that. We see a 300% increase in reports of self-harm in children. We see a spike in little children in America, in Las Vegas, in various states, have hung themselves.
You know,
this is no joke.
You had mentioned earlier about Australia, and you know, I just remembered when COVID-19 started and they were talking about lockdowns and the mental health impact of lockdowns on society. And the longest real study they were able to do was a horse flu, I believe it was, that they had in Australia. And they had locked down society for a couple of weeks, and it impacted people's mental health. And they were using, the World Health Organization was using those numbers. I don't know if you ever heard about that. But I remember in early March 2020, in fact, I will get that information for you. But it seems that Australia should have been the country that should have known better. What does New Zealand know that Australia doesn't know? New Zealand has one of the smallest deaths of COVID. They have 26 deaths out of almost 5 million people. What does New Zealand know that the rest of us don't know?
Yeah, but okay, hold on. You had to be a little careful with what you just said there, with using places like New Zealand, because those are like island nations. We understand this in a different way.
Trinidad is an island nation. That is what we have to compare to.
Yes, well, I'm trying to explain that to you at the beginning, and I'll try and be as succinct as I could again. The belief is because it was an island nation and you have more controlled borders, like just few points of entry, that you could have locked down, and you did in Trinidad. And my argument is that was the biggest mistake that we made, because Trinidad has a very low level of natural immunity in the population right now. So if the variants come knocking, the society has no immunity to it. Because you have to understand something. They have two types of immunity we're talking about here. Natural immunity from natural exposure and vaccine immunity from a vaccine. The immunity that you could get from natural exposure, that you could get it naturally and you recover, you clear the virus, and you have antibodies now, you have immunity, B-cell antibodies and T-cell antibodies. That immunity is very broad, very durable, long-lasting, and it could deal with anything coming at it in the future. The vaccine immunity that we are inducing now with these vaccines is not a regular vaccine immunity because it's only based on one particular protein on the virus, which is the spike protein. But if you throw a virus at it with any variation, any coronavirus with a variation, as you see now, all those mutations, the mutations are happening on the spike. The same spike protein that we build the vaccine for. So if the mutations happening on the spike, therefore all those mutants will be like a brand new virus to somebody who took the vaccine. It's as though they're not immune. And that's what we're trying to say. Those societies that...
And our medical health professionals said today, our medical health professionals from the Ministry of Health said today, get the vaccine anyway. Somebody from the University of the West Indies, I believe, said get the vaccine anyway and it will deal with the mutations. You see how they're contradicting science?
That is impossible. You have to understand, they only took one protein from the virus, the spike, and they took that genetic code and they're injecting you with that code to build just that one protein. But a virus doesn't have one protein on the outer coat. It has multiple proteins and a proper natural immunity response. We look at all the proteins on the outer coat and build immune responses and cells to all the different shapes of proteins, etc. So right now, if you just took the vaccine, the only immunity you're going to have is if that coronavirus with that particular spike comes at you. But now we know that the spike and the mutations are taking place on that spike. So we have the B117, the P1, etc. All these different variants. They're laughing at you if you took the vaccine because the vaccine was based on the parental strain. They're laughing and blowing past your immunity. And that is why I want you to listen to this statistic. Listen carefully, and I hope people listening. In the United States, doctors are now reporting, as of today, that 60 to 70% of all the new cases of COVID that they're seeing are people who've gotten both vaccines. I want you to listen again. 60 to 70% of the people who they are seeing as new cases of COVID have been vaccinated.
So you mean that this spike that we're having in Trinidad and Tobago could be caused by the vaccine?
The spike could be caused by the variants because if you were vaccinating people, they have no immunity. The vaccine...
People have been saying that this spike coincided with the arrival of the vaccine and the vaccination program. Could the vaccination program be behind this spike? Because nothing else they say makes sense. We've put thousands of people together for the candlelight vigils that we've been having, and they've not been able to trace a single case to a candlelight vigil.
Right. Good. And you ask an important question. Those kinds of things like candlelight vigil is good, Philip. Once the people attending are young, robust people too, and not granny, because they're mingling and they're spreading this virus. You have to understand, the spreading of the virus is a good thing amongst healthy people because these people are going to get natural immunity and take your population closer to herd immunity. Locking down your society is the most catastrophical, nonsensical, dangerous thing you can do. There is no example in the entire world since last year, over a year now, not one country, not one that can show that when they locked down, it curbed the deaths, etc. They have all failed. All. America, Canada, Britain, any country that has locked down. Lockdown is a failed policy.
Trinidad appointed Fitzgerald Hines to be the Minister of National Security. His first announcement today, special police teams to enforce new COVID regulations. Trinidad is being pushed into a dictatorship, into an absolute state ruled by dictate by the government.
Listen. Do you know how a lockdown can work? Theoretically, and this is theoretically. We're claiming it on paper still because it has never been done, because it can't be done. But theoretically, if every 200 nations in the world got together on a phone call and all of them said on the 1st of the next month, we're going to lock down our countries for 5 months together, 5 straight months. Nothing could come in, nothing could go out. Everybody will be locked in their homes. If every society took the same step at the same time, you could stop the virus. But nobody could do that because nobody could line it up like that. Of course you can't. And therefore, when society across the street is not locking down with you, and you lock down and you emerge, then the virus is going to spread to your borders. And that is why the lockdown is a complete failure. You cannot do it. Nobody has ever tried it because it is impossible. Because you will re-emerge to a destroyed society. Your economy will be destroyed if you lock down.
Paul,
people will commit suicide.
I know that everybody wanted to hear your take on a lot of what was going on. We're running out of time, and I need to ask you to give me your closing comments. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to ask you to give us your closing comments as we wrap up today's show.
Well, the closing comments is this, Philip. So I have to close it off by trying to say what's the best approach. The best approach today has to be this. You secure the high-risk persons, that is the elderly people in your private homes or in the nursing homes or long-term facilities in Trinidad. You find a way to secure them. Secure means you do not let them get exposed. So you stop the infected staff, the staff who come in from the outside, from infecting them. You secure them. If you have an elderly in your home and they are high risk, so they are 83 and they have diabetes and cardiovascular disease, you take care of them, and you have to figure out what take care means. I don't have to explain that to you. You don't want them exposed. So that's number one. Number two, you push public service announcements about vitamin D supplementation in Trinidad because most of the population are brown and black. You push PSAs about getting your weight under control. Why? 80 to 90% of people
PSAs are public service announcements. Public service announcements. You have to read and spell for some of the people listening. We have a low information voter base in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Continue.
Yeah. So the PSAs on vitamin D and getting your weight under control. 3, you make sure people try to go outside every day and get sunlight, natural sunlight, those who can. 4, you take the rest of society, which is the low-risk people, the young, the children, the teenagers, the people like yourself who are under 70 years old. That's the threshold, 70 years old, who are reasonably healthy, and you let them live a reasonably normal life, taking normal safety precautions, but unfettered by the government. Dr. Donald Henderson, who eradicated smallpox, I actually did some schooling under him in Johns Hopkins. Let me tell you something. He wrote a very seminal paper in 2006 about pandemic responding. And his paper is the seminal paper that everybody jumps off of. And he stated clearly in the conclusion that when you have a pandemic or a crisis like this, you do as little as possible to disrupt the society. You let the society continue running with no disruptions. You secure the elderly high risk, and you let the rest of society go on living life freely. Let the young people become infected, Because when they become infected, they are zero risk of getting severe illness or dying. So infection to them is nothing. It will be like a sniffle, if anything. And they will derive population immunity, and we could box the pathogen in. And lastly, we know that there is early outpatient treatment. That is, normally, when somebody tests positive, a high-risk person, and they go to the doctor say, well, you have no symptoms yet, go home and sit and wait. And when things worsen, then go to the emergency room. It takes about 10 to 12 to 14 days from the time you get exposed and symptoms begin for you to severely worsen if you are one of those very gravely ill people. But by that time, it's too late. You're going to die. So we know that we have antivirals available and corticosteroids available and antithrombotic drugs because blood clotting is a major problem. We know the early outpatient treatment works. There's a drug right now called ivermectin. It's an antiparasitic drug. It dramatically reduces the risk of death in those people who are old and with a lot of risk factors. There's hydroxychloroquine. Those are the antivirals we're working with. In terms of corticosteroids, we're using budesonide, inhaled budesonide, dexamethasone. In terms of antithrombotic, anti-blood clot drugs, we're using baby aspirin, we're using heparin, etc. So we know what to do. We know what to do when people are gravely ill and they even get into the hospital. But right now, you do not lock the society down with all this variant bullshit. You don't. You secure the elderly from the same variants you're talking about, and you let the rest of society go on. You do not lock down. Lockdowns have failed.
Paul,
school closures have failed.
I have to interrupt you, but we have to bring you back on the show maybe later on this week. Satish will give me that schedule. Thanks a lot for everything you just did and everything you just said. Much appreciated. Dr. Paul Elias Alexander, he was one of the people that was very instrumental in getting a handle on this COVID-19 at the very early stage of the thing. Listen, we in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a responsibility to separate the nonsense, regardless of who's giving you the nonsense. If the facts not making sense, double check your facts and the sources of your facts. We have a real situation now. The head of the Trotters Group, Peter George Jr., asked the government, show us the science where a single person got COVID-19 in a restaurant. Derek Chin of the Movie Town Group is asking, show us the science of where a person got COVID-19 in a cinema. We know that there was some outbreak in a police station in Central, 39 police out of the blue. They never told us what started that. We know that there was a platform in Guayagari and somebody was just brought to that platform, infect everybody. We know about that, but we shut down the market because one man tests positive and caused people to lose millions. The country is being run off the rails by this government. It's overreaction, it's overcorrection, or this is deliberate and designed to damage. I want to tell you something. We cannot continue going down along this road, closing our eyes to the reality that those in public office may not know what the hell they're doing. The Ministry of Health is giving us a crocus bag of nonsense. The court is supposed to dictate, even if you're going to uphold that they're preposterous positions, if you're going to uphold that, dictate to them, withhold identities, give us information, let us know comorbidities, let us know ages, let us know weights. We will be able to understand then why we have a spike and why we have cases. I, on behalf of the Candlelight Movement of Trinidad and Tobago, ask the government, show us one case that came out of the thousands of people that were gathering nightly for the Candlelight Vigil. Not one. Not one. But you can't explain to the public and you can't tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago, these two rocks in the sea, how did we get a Brazilian variant when we locked down 13 months now and the borders closed? You're not making sense. It's not adding up. And you're using fear-mongering to drive the people into a position of despair and anxiety. And that has to stop. And our courts have to step up. The courts of the Republic, the justice system has to step up and rein in this rogue government. We need our people to be able to come home. We need our economy open, not shut. These spikes they're telling you about spikes and these surges that the fake media telling you surges, all of those people have mild COVID. This is a ridiculous overreaction to something that will destroy lives for years to come as we get to a place. The people who are easily defending the government's position are those who line up every day for their handout. Public services getting full salaries. Government ministers and members of parliament getting their full salary. While the rest of the country is told that we in this together and we have to work together and we have to endure this. If it is something to endure from the top. Her Excellency, the President, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, you all are the first ones to take a cut in salary. Lead from the top. You have not done that to date. But telling the rest of us what we need to do to safeguard COVID, while the Prime Minister himself COVID positive, took 50,000 people to Tobago with him to the South Beach of Trinidad to party for Easter weekend. Now, look what's going on. Look where we at. This can't continue. We need to question. This is a democracy. We need answers. You need to do your job properly. And we will make sure and press for those things. Satish will give you the rest of the ads. Remember to like, follow, share all our pages. If you're not yet on the WhatsApp broadcast, Satish has given you a link to the WhatsApp group. But I have a WhatsApp broadcast on my phone, 682-2110. And if you send me your name as a WhatsApp to 682-2110, please do not send anything else. Just send your name, first name, last name, nothing else, not even hi. Send that and I'll add you to the WhatsApp group. The Citizens Union of Trinidad and Tobago reminds you, if you've not yet joined, visit citizensuniontt.org, citizensuniontt.com and join. We are creating one mass of Trinbagonians, red, white, black, green, and every shade in between. We were supposed to march to the Parliament on the 7th of May to give them the petition that hundreds of thousands of you have signed. We will stick a pin. There will be an emergency meeting of the Candlelight Movement. We will come up with a date outside of May 16th. I told you, Trinidad and Tobago, the Candlelight Movement is here to stay. We will never forget what was done to Andrea Barrett. Like the Black Lives Matter movement in America was able to celebrate victory and justice for George Floyd yesterday, I wait for the day when we could stand with Andrea's daddy and celebrate justice for Andrea in this country so that no other woman in Trinidad and Tobago could be at risk to being kidnapped, raped, murdered, and flung over a precipice. The insanity that the Prime Minister and his cabinet were able to go to the Parliament and talk foolishness about we bringing pepper spray legislation and after that nothing. We will serve you with the petition. And then we will show you the power of the vote that put you there, that will take you from there and put somebody else there if you don't do the job. My name is Philip Edward Alexander. This has been Plain Talk.